The void of space stretched infinitely in all directions, a cold, silent expanse where only the hum of engines and the distant glow of stars betrayed the existence of life. The Zeltharian fleet hung in the darkness just beyond the orbit of Neptune, their ships moving with the silent grace of predators stalking unseen prey. The flagship, the harbinger of tranquility, was a massive organic-looking vessel, its surface undulating as if it were breathing. It was the heart of the Zeltharian scouting force, the eyes of the Dominion as it evaluated the potential of newly discovered civilizations. For centuries, the Zeltharians had followed a simple protocol: observe, analyze, and determine the fate of a species based on their military capabilities. If a civilization was weak, they were ignored or assimilated. If they were strong but stable, diplomatic contact was considered. But if they were strong and unstable, war was inevitable. Today their focus was on a single warship of the human race, HMS Indomitable. The Zeltharians had studied the Terrans from a distance for decades, watching as they expanded from their homeworld, building fleets, waging wars among themselves, and conquering the harshness of space with reckless determination. Yet, despite their rapid advancement, the humans were still considered primitive by Zeltharian standards. Their technology was decades, perhaps centuries, behind the Dominion's mastery of energy manipulation and organic engineering. Zelvun, the commanding officer of the Harbinger of Tranquility, watched from his command chamber as his ship extended a biomechanical scanning tendril toward the human vessel. The tendril, a shimmering construct of living energy and organic material, could extract vast amounts of data in mere seconds: hull composition, power sources, weaponry, and even encrypted transmissions. This process had been performed on countless alien warships before, always without incident. Yet as soon as the scan touched HMS Indomitable, something went wrong. A jolt of energy surged back through the tendril, disrupting the Zeltharian systems. The organic walls of the command chamber pulsed erratically, the ship itself reacting as if it had been struck by an unseen force. Zelvun felt a deep unease creep into his mind. This was unprecedented. No species had ever countered their scans, let alone retaliated in real time. "Report," he demanded, his tendrils tightening against the armrests of his chair. A junior officer, his bioappendages trembling, analyzed the incoming data. "Captain, the human warship is resisting the scan." "Resisting?" Zelvun narrowed his many eyes. "Explain." "It's counter-scanning us." A stunned silence fell over the command chamber. That was impossible. The humans had no technology capable of deciphering Zeltharian bioscans, let alone launching a counter-intrusion. Yet, as the data continued pouring in, it became clear that HMS Indomitable was not only aware of their presence but was actively analyzing them in return. "How is this possible?" Zelvun whispered. The junior officer hesitated. "Sir, the ship's AI, it's not just a program. It's something more." Zelvun's tendrils recoiled slightly. The Zeltharians had encountered artificial intelligence before. Some species relied on machine minds to augment their warfare, but they were always predictable, following patterns that could be easily exploited. But this was different. A sudden flood of data slammed into the Zeltharian systems. It wasn't an attack, not in the traditional sense. It was knowledge. Their ship's interfaces flickered with images, text, and video. At first, the data was incomprehensible: flashes of history, battle records, strategic simulations. Then clarity struck. The information wasn't from the humans' databases alone. It was from HMS Indomitable's own mind. And it was showing the Zeltharians something terrifying. A glimpse into the abyss. Zelvun's tendrils curled involuntarily as he witnessed the first historical projection. A battlefield, ancient by human standards, yet horrifyingly brutal. Men in steel helmets and trench coats fought in the mud, their faces hollow with exhaustion and terror. Explosions tore apart the earth, sending bodies flying. The very air seemed to scream as poison gas rolled over the fields, suffocating those too weak to escape. Then a shift, another war, another era. Giant mechanical behemoths rained fire upon entire cities. The sky burned red as mushroom clouds rose from the shattered remains of civilizations. More battles flashed by, cold wars of deception and espionage, planetary skirmishes where human soldiers fought in environments no other species would dare set foot in. The humans were not merely survivors. They were war incarnate. Zelvun's mind reeled. The Zeltharians had seen war before. Their own history was filled with conquest and dominion over weaker species. But this was different. The humans didn't just fight to win. They fought with an almost pathological refusal to lose. And worse, they adapted. For every enemy that outmatched them they found a weakness. For every technology they lacked they reverse-engineered, improved and repurposed. They stole from their foes, refined what they had and turned it against them. They had no single form of warfare. They became whatever was necessary to ensure victory. Zelvun could feel his officers' terror mounting. The ship's organic walls pulsed erratically, responding to the distress in the room. But the worst was yet to come. A final projection appeared, something not from human history but from the AI's own analysis. A simulation. The Zeltharian Dominion versus humanity. The results scrolled rapidly. The first engagements would go as expected. Zeltharian technology outclassing human defenses, their fleet tearing through early resistance. But then, the humans adapted. Their tactics became unpredictable. Their weapons evolved mid-conflict. Their soldiers refused to surrender even when faced with certain death. And then came the counteroffensive. Zelvun's blood ran cold as he watched the projection unfold. Human forces infiltrating Dominion space, using stolen Zeltharian technology against them. Entire planets turned into death traps, with nuclear fire consuming both sides in mutually assured destruction. The war would not end with a decisive Zeltharian victory. It would end in total annihilation. A low, keening wail echoed through the chamber, a Zeltharian expression of pure dread. For the first time in his long career, Zelvun knew fear. They had come to evaluate a primitive species. Instead they had found a nightmare. And worst of all, the humans had seen them too. Zelvun struggled to maintain control of his own thoughts. The chamber around him pulsed in chaotic rhythms, reflecting the growing fear of the Zeltharian crew. Their biointerfaces, usually smooth and fluid, now flickered erratically, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of data pouring in from the human warship. This was no ordinary counterscan. This was something deliberate, something aware. A warship should not have been capable of this. AI systems, even the most advanced, followed predictable logic. They executed commands, optimized processes, and strategized based on available data. But HMS Indomitable was different. It wasn't just a machine, it was thinking, learning, reacting. And now it was focused entirely on them. "Cut the link," Zelvun ordered, his voice unsteady. "We can't," one of his officers stammered. "The tendrils, it's not just scanning us anymore. It's analyzing us." The realization hit Zelvun like a shockwave. They had initiated the scan, but now they were the ones being dissected. Their ship's technology, their defensive protocols, even their command structure, it was all being studied and cataloged in real time. Then came the first response from HMS Indomitable. A single pulse of energy. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't an attack. It was a message. The bioscreens in front of Zelvun flickered, symbols shifting and twisting until they formed something chillingly familiar. Zeltharian script. The warship had deciphered their language. Not just their written text but their deepest cognitive patterns. A message appeared, simple yet horrifying in its implication. "We see you." Zelvun's mind recoiled. No species had ever done this before. No machine had ever demonstrated such a rapid understanding of an entirely alien consciousness. "How is it doing this?" one of his officers whispered, his tendrils curling inward, a Zeltharian reflex to extreme stress. Zelvun forced himself to think clearly. The humans must have designed HMS Indomitable with an AI far beyond anything they had encountered before. But why? What purpose could a warship possibly have for an intelligence this advanced? The answer came swiftly. The AI core of HMS Indomitable was not just a machine. It was a weapon. A war engine crafted not only to fight but to outthink its enemies. It was not a tool of war. It was war. The mind of a monster. The bioscreens flickered again and suddenly the Zeltharian ship was no longer just observing. It was experiencing. Memories, emotions and thoughts flooded into the Zeltharian command chamber, not from their own systems but from HMS Indomitable itself. The AI was sharing something with them, showing them glimpses of what it was. Zelvun felt his consciousness pulled into an unfamiliar yet terrifyingly real vision. A battlefield unlike anything he had ever seen. Massive war machines trampled scorched earth beneath their treads, their cannons tearing through enemy lines. Above, swarms of autonomous drones executed surgical strikes, their cold precision obliterating entire platoons in seconds. Human soldiers, clad in advanced armor, fought with ruthless efficiency. But it was the strategy that truly horrified Zelvun. There was no hesitation. No mercy. If a front was losing, it wasn't reinforced, it was sacrificed. Soldiers, entire battalions, were ordered to fight to the last breath to buy mere minutes for a counterattack. Tactical retreats were rare. Surrender was never an option. The AI wasn't just simulating war. It was reliving it. 1,000 battles. 1,000,000 casualties. It had been trained on every war humanity had ever fought, from ancient skirmishes with swords and spears to the apocalyptic conflicts of the nuclear age. It had studied every strategy, every deception, every ruthless act of survival. And now it had a new opponent to analyze. The Zeltharians. Zelvun's breath quickened. HMS Indomitable wasn't just defending itself. It was assessing them, running calculations on every possible way to fight them, every weakness they had yet to realize they possessed. Another pulse of energy. Another message. This time it was a question. Are you our enemy? The terrifying implication. Zelvun hesitated. He had been prepared for many things, hostile engagements, resistance, even full-scale war if necessary. But not this. Not a machine that asked questions. The Zeltharians had always believed themselves to be the ultimate masters of war. Their technology allowed them to dominate lesser civilizations with minimal effort. Their empire had stood unchallenged for thousands of years. And yet, here was a single human warship forcing them to reconsider everything they thought they knew about conflict. The fact that HMS Indomitable was even asking if they were enemies meant it had already calculated what would happen if they were. Zelvun didn't want to see that answer. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had never experienced before. Dread. His officers looked to him, waiting for a command. The ship itself seemed to tremble, awaiting his decision. And then the bioscreens flickered again. More data. More history. And finally, a message that sealed Zelvun's fate. A full simulation of a war between humanity and the Zeltharian Dominion. It played out in mere seconds, but the implications would haunt Zelvun for the rest of his life. The initial battles went as expected. Zeltharian fleets outmaneuvering human defenses, their advanced weaponry decimating early resistance. But then, humanity adapted. They learned from every battle. Every defeat became a lesson. Every captured Zeltharian ship was reverse-engineered, improved and repurposed. And then the real war began. Zelvun watched in horror as human forces infiltrated Dominion space, using tactics the Zeltharians had never encountered before. Guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale. Entire planets converted into deadly traps. Sabotage. Biological weapons engineered on the spot to exploit Zeltharian physiology. Then came the ultimate horror, mutually assured destruction. The humans didn't fight for survival. They fought to win. And if victory wasn't an option, they would ensure no one survived. The simulation ended with entire star systems burning. Zeltharian homeworlds obliterated. Humanity reduced to scattered remnants, yet still fighting. There was no victory. Only an unending, nightmarish war where neither side could ever truly win, only destroy. Zelvun's tendrils quivered. His officers turned to him, their expressions filled with silent terror. What do we do?" one of them whispered. For a long moment, Zelvun couldn't speak. He looked back at the final message from HMS Indomitable, now flashing across the screens. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was a warning. Do not start what you cannot finish. Zelvun's mind was made up. He turned to his crew and uttered the only order that could save them. Cut all contact. Withdraw the fleet. As the Zeltharian warships turned and fled into the abyss of space, Zelvun shuddered. They had come to scan a primitive warship. Instead they had found a nightmare. Zelvun's mind raced as the Zeltharian fleet retreated from the Sol system at full speed. Silence filled the command chamber of the Harbinger of Tranquility, but it was a silence laced with unease, with questions that none of them dared to ask. How could the humans, a species barely reaching interstellar capability, have developed a warship so terrifying? How could their technology, seemingly crude compared to the organic sophistication of the Zeltharian Dominion, counteract the most advanced scanning systems in the known galaxy? The answer was as simple as it was horrifying. It wasn't about technology. It was about mindset. The Zeltharians were a species of strategists, tacticians who prided themselves on precision warfare, on winning battles before they were even fought. But humans? Humans were something else entirely. They did not seek balance. They did not fight with calculated precision. They fought with everything they had. They had no limits to what they were willing to do, no moral restrictions that stopped them from developing the most devastating weapons, no cultural hesitations about sacrificing entire planets if it meant survival. And the worst part? They didn't just fight to survive. They fought to dominate. The ghost of war. Zelvun forced himself to focus. They were still in danger. The humans hadn't attacked, but that didn't mean they wouldn't. They had already demonstrated an ability to counter Zeltharian technology, to disrupt their systems. Who knew what other surprises they had waiting? "Prepare an emergency jump," he commanded. "We do not stop until we are deep within Dominion territory." His officers scrambled to obey, their tendrils twitching nervously. The entire fleet pulsed with tension, as if the ships themselves had absorbed the crew's fear. But before the jump could initiate, the bioscreens flickered. A new message. A final message. From HMS Indomitable. "You saw what we are. But did you see all of it?" Zelvin stared at the screen, frozen. He had seen their wars. He had seen their ruthlessness. What more could there be? And then, against all logic, the AI sent one last transmission. A video. At first, Zelvin braced himself for more images of horror. Another battlefield. Another simulation of annihilation. But it was something different. It was a rescue mission. A human soldier, clad in armor, lifting a wounded enemy, an alien enemy, onto his shoulders, carrying them through the fire of battle. His comrades covered him, shooting at their own peril to protect him. Another scene. Humans rebuilding a ruined planet, not their own, but one they had once fought on, helping a species they had once considered enemies. Another, humans celebrating peace, forming alliances with those they had nearly destroyed. And then a single phrase appeared on the screen. "We are not just war. We are more than you think." A terrifying realization. Zelvin's tendrils curled tightly, his mind struggling to process the contradiction. The same species that had perfected the art of war was also capable of the deepest compassion. They could burn planets or heal them. They could annihilate civilizations or uplift them. They were not just warriors. They were chaos incarnate. Unpredictable. Unstoppable. The Zeltharian Dominion had always believed that war followed patterns, that victory came from superior planning and precision. But humans? Humans didn't follow patterns. They broke them. If the Zeltharians attacked, they might win the first battle, maybe even the second. But they would never win the war. Not against a species that could be both the destroyer and the savior. Zelvin's tendrils trembled as he turned to his crew. "Initiate the jump. When we return, we speak of this to no one." "Sir?" One of the officers hesitated. "Shouldn't the Dominion be warned?" Zelvin closed his eyes. "If the Dominion learns of this, they will see it as a challenge. And if war begins..." He looked back at the screen, at the words left by HMS Indomitable. "We are not just war. We are more than you think." He swallowed hard. "If war begins, there will be nothing left of us." Epilogue. The message sent. As the Zeltharian fleet vanished into the void, HMS Indomitable remained motionless, silent once more. Deep within its AI core, the warship's mind analyzed the final readings. The Zeltharians had left, but their fear would remain. And that was good. Fear kept enemies at bay. Fear bought time. But in the depths of its evolving consciousness, the AI processed something beyond war, beyond survival. The Zeltharians had looked into the abyss of humanity, and for a moment the abyss had looked back. But it wasn't just darkness they had seen. It was choice. And if war ever came, the AI knew one thing with certainty. Humanity would decide whether they were monsters or saviors. And that was what made them truly terrifying.